Welcome to the driveway. Today I'm going to talk about hugelkultur. I know I talk a lot about making fire and traps and bushcraft stuff, but I'm also really into developing the driveway, my yard. I have over 50 edible plants that grow, mostly they're perennials, in my yard. And this is an acre piece of property where I do this, and I only use probably a fourth of that for growing. So this is a technique called Hugelkultur, again, that was used in Germany for hundreds of years and in other parts of Europe, where they would dig holes, dig trenching, and put in wood, just put in logs. It could be big material or smaller material, and this is meant to replicate what happens in the woods when a tree falls down. And then there's erosion that sort of half buries a tree, and these fallen trees they become like nursemaids for smaller plants. They begin to put their nutrients back into the soil as they rot away slowly, and they hold water like a sponge as they age. So the smaller plants, the seeds that blow or fall into these piles would grow more efficiently. So what I've done is I've dug a trench here up against some wire. This is where I typically would grow tomatoes or climbing beans, things of that nature. I try to rotate a good bit. But we're going to experiment a little bit. I've got some old oak logs. They're about 5 years old, and they've been out in the weather, and they're really rough. Let me pull one over here. As you can see, they had about that much material on the outside that's rotted and sloughed off. So these are perfect. You don't want to really plant anything green because it can re-sprout. Green material is notorious for coming back alive. Everything wants to live forever. So we're going to take these really aged ones. They're already pretty spongy. When it rains, these absorb water, and that's one of the great things about hugelkultur. Once these are in the ground, even in a dry year, they'll absorb water and hold it and release it more slowly. As the soil dries out, it'll begin to pull water from these wet stumps. Now, you can also just lay these on the surface of the ground and put dirt over the top, but then you got to ask yourself where you're getting the dirt, so you're having to move dirt. The way I'm doing it in the trench is going to work better for what I've got. So we're just going to lay the logs in and start to cover them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Now notice I've got a shorter piece, a little piece of ground that's not quite long enough for a whole log, and for this one anybody that gets wood knows how this is. You end up with an old piece that has a limb coming off of it. These are boogers to split, so often I lay them to the side and I come split them later. This is one I never got to. Kept putting it off, but it rotted really well, so it's perfect for what we're doing today. We're just going to throw that in there. Now they don't have to be 5 feet deep. As a matter of fact, you don't want that. You want them pretty close to the soil surface, because you're going to take all this dirt and mound it. Now other people with far more knowledge and experience than I do would take smaller pieces, little pieces of brush, and fill in all these gaps. Some people even would shove cardboard in there, leaves, organic material of any kind that's going to rot. I don't want to do that because most of the bush clippings I have right now are still a little green. I'm not convinced they won't try to come back. And I also am keen on trying something from a lady called Ruth Stout. I spread hay all over my property in the little garden spaces that I have throughout, in between clusters that I'm trying to turn into food forests. So you'd have trees and bushes and things like that. This is in my mind for annuals. Like I said, I'll probably put beans or tomatoes or something that can grow and take advantage of this mesh screening. What I want to do is bury these, cover them with dirt, and then cover the top with hay or leaf material, so that I've sandwiched soil between two decay sources. And what happens is, if your log is not aged well enough, if it's not old and mostly rotten, it will pull nitrogen out of the soil instead of release nitrogen. Now, this will still happen to some extent, and that's why you shouldn't mix wood chips in with your soil. You lay wood chips over the top, and the decomposition happens right at where those two different materials touch. Where the wood chips touch the soil, there's rot. If you bury the wood chips, there's a slower release, but they can pull more nitrogen out of your soil than they're really helping you. So in this situation, these may pull a little bit of nitrogen, probably not a lot because they're so old. As they get wet, they'll probably put out more things that are good than take in. We're going to have the soil on top, and then we're going to have it covered with hay, which will also pull nitrogen if it's mixed in with the dirt. But if it's laying on top, it will decay and create a nutrient-rich layer right at the touch point between that soil and that hay or those leaves or whatever decaying material I put on top. So I'm hoping to sandwich this dirt in between two decay layers, the logs and the hay, the cover material, and hopefully in the spring we'll see a difference in this area. I'm putting it right up against the fence because sometimes I will hand till the rest of this, and obviously I don't want to have to re-till this. This is a more permanent bed and should get richer over the next few years. So this is an installation. It's not something I'm going to be tweaking as we go along, other than to cover it with more material on the top. So let's see. Let's fill it all in and see what it looks like. And here we are with the completed bed. I haven't covered it yet. I'll go back over this and put hay. Aged hay. Now there's another thing. I mentioned you don't want to plant a plant. It really will grow because you're planting it. If you put green material, green logs, green pieces of wood underneath here, there's a very good chance they'll sprout and you'll start getting little trees. You don't want that. And you don't want to spread new hay over the top of anything that you're going to use for planting. Hay is a mulch, and you want it to rot at the intersection between the dirt and where it lays. You don't want to mix it in. But if you plant anything, I would say let it be 3-year-old hay. If you've got access to hay that's aged for 3 years, you're going to probably avoid a lot of the seeds. Hay is full of seeds. So you don't want more hay growing. You want this material to mulch the ground so that unwanted plants don't grow. So get some really good aged hay or straw or leaves. Leaves are great. Cover this, and then right now, believe it or not, it's a 70-degree late January day in North Georgia. There could even be snow on the ground some years, 70 degrees. But you want this to be ready in the spring to start planting. Probably this year I'll put cucumbers and maybe tomatoes here. Sometimes I put pole beans in this area, but I really expect it to start producing better next year. As the logs rot down and absorb water, that's where you start to see your benefits. This first year, they're pretty well aged logs, so we may get some good benefits then too. But it takes time. This is a slow release formula for the soil. These logs, the buried material will rot slowly and re-release that into the soil. So when you burn, you're releasing carbon into the air. When you bury, you're slowly releasing all that material back into the soil. And a lot of people are real proponents of the global warming theory, and it is a theory. This is something you can do to not release carbon into the atmosphere quickly and add to that perceived problem. I don't really have a dog in that fight. It is 70 degrees in January, but that's not unheard of. I've been around for 44 years and I've seen this before. So time will tell. This is what a Hugelkultur bed looks like. Most people would make it a lot wider and would actually stack the logs up like a pyramid and make a huge mound. But for your front yard, I don't know. That's pretty ambitious, and I think this is good enough for what I'm doing here on my little acre.